nešto ispričam o firmi Bitdefender koju danas predstavljamo. Što nisam htjeli da ovo bude klasična onako korporativna komercijalna prezentacija, da će čovjek ispriča nešto onako interesantno iz prakse, pa ću ja samo vrlo kratko nešto o njima. Znači, ovo je jedna priča o uspjehu koja možda posluži ovakvim našim firmama kao primjer, znači da firma iz ovog regiona može da bude veoma uspješna na svjetskom nivou. Bitdefender je firma koja je nastala u Rumuniji. Ljudi kod nas uglavnom ne znaju da su naši prvi počeli u Rumuniji strahovito govori o informatici. Znači, veliki broj zapadnih firmi je tamo napravio svoje ispostave i koristi njihove stručnjake za svoje potrebe, jel? Ali tamo je nastala i gomila firmi koji se bave programiranjem i to vrlo često nije ono najprostije programiranje, jer su to često neke stvari koje su onako vrlo specifične, koje ne može baš svako da bude. Bitdefender je kompanija koja je nastala znači, izvan Rumuniji i ostvarila veliki uspjeh na svjetskom tržištu, znači ona je jedna od vodećih firmi u, ajde kažem, anti-malware zaštiti, ali ne bave se, znači nemaju samo proizvode iz oblasti anti-malware zaštite, već imaju u svoj EDR, NDR, SDR, znači svoja integrisana rješenja, znači sami prave, ne zavise od drugih i imaju i svoj threat intelligence, o kome je kolega pričao, znači oni imaju svoje rješenje koje radi taj posao. Ajde, ne pričam više, mislim da će ova priča biti zanimljiva, znači to je ukratko o njima. CIO je distributer, koga zanimaju ovo rješenje, naravno da se ovo take it from.
Sure. Hello everybody, I'm sure it was all good things, thank you Dan. I am Razvan Strambu, I'm from Romania, and I work with Bitdefender. I've been doing this for just over a year. My actual background is in cloud SaaS and PaaS solutions, and my education is in psychology, but I'm glad to say that my mom knows that her son is an engineer now. So today I won't be talking about portfolios or whatever, because if you want to know about portfolios or whatever, you can come and talk to me, or you can go and talk to the lovely friends at CEE. Today we're going to be talking a little bit around ransomware, how it works, how it's been evolving lately. We'll talk a little bit about decryptors and why they're important, and we'll also try and cover shortly a quick little demonstration of what one of these incidents can actually look like, right, and what technology will go up against it and how. So let's go through ransomware management, right? So in principle, we're going to be running through prevention, protection, detection, and response, right? Backup and restore, working together with law enforcement, working with decryptors, and then hopefully not having to worry about prevention again, right? So, if we're looking at prevention, and you'll see a lot of information around endpoint risk analytics and how we are looking at different elements around our systems to make sure that they're as airtight and hardened as possible so that we don't allow any sort of intrusions. We're looking at things like external attack surfaces, right, be it RDP services being available or weak passwords from our users. We're looking at lateral movement attacks, and you'll hear people in the cybersecurity space talk about network detection and response. You'll hear about network attack defenses and identifying these movements in the network itself without actually allowing them to have any access to the computers. We're looking at potential SAMA shares, right, to write to them, as well as misconfigurations and risky human behavior. Right? We're looking at whether or not we can look across our operating systems and say that there's specific ports opened, or that there's, shares to the network shares that we've got access to without passwords, or any methodology that an attacker could use in order to gain access to our systems. As well as risky human behaviors, as in don't go to the bad sites and update your passwords regularly. Right? Prevention, while I only have one slide on it, is one of the strongest ways to mitigate ransomware in the first place, right? If they don't have access to your data, they don't have access to your systems in the first place, chances are you won't be able to run all of their processes and all of their malware in order to get access, right? Then we're talking around protection, and this one's going to be a little denser, right? We're going to talk around network level protection. We're talking about the possibility to do remote desktop protocol, brute forces. We're talking about connection to Tor servers by accessing sites that mimic other sites, and you think you're on the good side because it looks like the site that you knew about, but somehow you got access to the onion site that looks just like it, but now gets access to you. Right? We're looking at ransomware URLs and phishing and scam emails, which are a major way into companies. You'll just click whatever, especially if the name of the email looks like it's from your boss and it says, oh, look, this is our budget for the month. That's how my boss got me the first time with the internal phishing emails, right, for tests. But in principle, there's a lot of network level protection that you're looking for beyond just initial access and lateral movements and password stealers and so on and so forth. Right? The second one is on access, and there's three terms under there. There's anti-malware, hybrid-detect, and machine learning. Hybrid-detect is our nomenclature for machine learning. And why we're talking about two different instances, right, anti-malware and machine learning, is because anti-malware is what the market often refers to as an antivirus, right? We're looking at signals, we're looking at specific hashes that we know about, we're looking at our threat intelligence library and figuring out whether something that's trying to gain access to our systems is known to us as being malicious. Whereas machine learning is just an additional layer of protection, not by looking at signals, not by looking at specific hashes, but just by creating a baseline understanding of what's normal for these machines. And then making sure that if something outside of that normality actually happens, we're able to block it, or send it to quarantine, or at least take some form of action against something that's outside of this norm, right? And we'll be talking about behavior and anomalies here. Right? The CEO or the CFO or whoever has the money. But usually, the persons you'll be talking to are the IT guys. It'll be you guys, right? And those people, first, despite the fact that they're also going to be fired, they try to understand whether or not you can be a partner, a specialist, somebody to help them in a specific way. The first thing that, I was at another conference about a month ago, and the partner of ours said, here's the customer, right? Just handed me the phone. It's like, okay, got it. They're like, we had this encryption happen. Like, okay, great. And we've got servers hanging and they, blah, blah, great, okay. And it was Akira. Okay, now we've got something to talk about, right? The fact that you got encrypted, and it was a very directed attack because there weren't a lot of warning signs, and the truth is that they were using a very base license of another company. I don't badmouth other companies, so I'm not going to tell you who it was, right? But they were using a very basic license, and it wasn't enough to stop the attack, and the attacker was very active in the system. But the simple fact that they said, okay, it's Akira, and we'll say, great. You buy yourself a few days, and we will go do our research. And I went and found out that the guys from Avast had made a decryptor, and the first thing that they did was, okay, we've got the data decrypted. We're not fired. How much does Bitdefender cost? Right, basically. But step one is figure out whether or not you can help. Because the truth is, if you're talking to the CISO, he's going to be an angry man with a big problem, and probably not a very deep understanding of what the problem was. If you're talking to the IT manager, or maybe even the sysadmin, chances are you'll get the information you need, and you'll be able to help them out. Any other questions? Thank you.
How many false positives you have?
Sorry?
How many false positives you have in some environment, or it can find what is
Sure. It's a really good question about false positives. It really depends on what technology, and I'll get to you as well. What technology is the one that's generating false positives, right? Because I like to look at it in three different layers. There's the anti-malware stuff that rarely does false positives. Everybody in the cybersecurity space basically has access to the same hashes, to the same signals. We know what malware is. If you guys get stuff from us or from any other vendor, chances are they'll have a solid and very similar database of understanding. And those usually don't generate too many false positives. Then there's the machine learning layer. And the machine learning layer really depends on what the industry or what the company does. Because we've had companies, they were in the auto industry and they had a big database and they started the machine learning from day zero, despite the fact that the best practice is that you let it run in record only for about 2-3 weeks, right? And they just started it from day one and they had zero problems because their software wasn't complicated. They weren't looking at mass scripts, process generation, and so on and so forth. Whereas we had another company in the UK that did exactly that. They were running cross-network scripts for process generation, for file generation. And that is going to be picked up, not just by the machine learning layer, but it might be picked up by the anomaly detection layer, right? The endpoint detection and response, the last bit that we were looking at, might also say, look at this is weird, this is strange, right? And the truth is, every time you're going to be generating these processes, chances are they'll have a new process ID, in which case doing exclusion management or whitelisting is going to be difficult, and it really depends on the company and the industry a lot, right? If we work with, I don't know, a hospital, things are simple, right? Just a few exceptions and we're safe. If we're working with software developers, it might be better to give them a little bit more control and allow the developers themselves to turn systems off and on, as long as you've done a little bit of security training. But it's always a balance game. Right? Thank you. Please.
When a big company, they update or any update, how much time is needed to your company or company in your branch to create definitions to catch up this
Sure. And that's a really good question, because zero-day is an often used vulnerability. Right? Zero-day attacks refer to the fact that we've got a piece of software that just got a new update, and that new update, unbeknownst to the vendor that made that software, contains a vulnerability that allows access to the system. Right? And there's millions of updates every day, right? You're using not just operating system, you're using everything from Adobe to Zoom, A to Z, and one of them might generate a zero-day vulnerability that allows an attacker to weigh in. And the truth is, there's two answers to this one. One of them is system-wide process detections. There are specific detections that you can have across the system that tell you about behaviors that are zero-day-like, and there's a solid bit of protection there. And then there's application-specific detections that you can have, but you can't be super granular about it, right? You can say, I'm going to look at Office applications, I'm going to look at 7-zip, and I'm going to look at Apache, but you can't really make a complete list. And the truth is that it's not just us that work with these zero-day patches and common vulnerabilities that pop up. It's us working together with MITRE so that we can figure out, oh look, there's a zero-day attack. The vendor has to launch a patch, and until then, we work with MITRE to figure out what techniques the zero-day attack was using in order to then push out a security update in order to say, okay, this is a behavior, all right. And how quickly we get through that really depends on the complexity of the attack. Usually the zero-day stuff can be updated anywhere between 4 hours in the day, but again, it's really heavy and it depends on the customers. We've had customers say, oh, I'm not going to look for security updates every hour, that's stupid. Well, and we've also had a company that said, oh, I update my software every 3 months. Again, it'll always come back to human error and how ready people are to sacrifice a little bit of resource in order to gain more security. Any other questions?